Beloved of God, I greet you. Today is Friday, and we are concluding on this week's message we are sharing. Process it right. Process it right. We've looked at how to process mercy, the mercy of God. We've looked at how to process the faithfulness of God. And today I'm going to, try and then venture into a place where I believe, or which I believe most people are going to find a bit controversial. But this is going to be a message that I want you to pay particular attention to, because it is one of the most misunderstood or areas that we are not able to process it right. And so the understanding of many in this area is not so accurate, and we have to be careful with this message and pay attention to it. It is going to be as brief as possible, but I believe that whatever point we have to make in this message, we will make it before we end it. Today we are looking at how to process grace. Processing grace rightly, or process grace rightly. Grace, I believe, is the most commonly used terminology in Christianity, if I'm not, mistaken. But it is true that grace dominates a lot of the Christian conversations and sermons that we preach. And many, in fact, myself, I have thought of grace or taught grace on so many occasions, but people keep sending me messages, asking questions about it. But I want us to just understand today that it is just what it is, that we have to process it right. We have to process it right and get the correct or right understanding of what it is. In the book of 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse number 21, 2 Corinthians 5, the last verse, which is 21, scripture says, God made the one who did not know sin to be sin for us, so that God's righteousness would be produced in us. When we did not qualify, God himself showed us this great grace by, putting together what could be or what would be the best form of righteousness, and he gave it to us just by grace. Just by grace, he gave that to us. Now, when you move from that chapter, the chapter 5 of 2 Corinthians, and you move to the chapter 6, the first verse, which is 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 1. Again, Paul continues and says, since God has produced this righteousness, he says, since then, we are working with God. We plead with you not to accept God's grace in vain. So now, I can confidently say, just by what Paul has said here, that grace must be processed to be understood as something that God gives with expectation that we are going to take up a certain responsibility from it. So grace comes for us to also take certain responsibilities out of it. So we just don't, receive grace and receive it and receive it and receive it just in vain like that. Grace must be received, and a certain responsibility must come with it for us to also take hold of and work with it. In the book of Malachi chapter 2, this scripture, one day we are going to talk about it. But Malachi 2 is not directly on grace, but I want to use it to explain something to us. Malachi 2:15, scripture says, did he not make them one, The vestige of the Spirit remains in him. And why did he make them one? Now he's asking, God is asking, why did he make a man and a woman, a husband and a wife one? Why did he do that? Then he answers, he was seeking godly offspring. So let's assume that the union of a man and a woman is grace. God is seeking something, that is why he gave us grace. God is seeking something, that is why he gives a man a woman and a woman a man. Or there is something God is seeking, for which reason he makes it, he makes a couple able to have a child or children. The children that God gives to people that are seeking children, he doesn't give to them so that they will be able to tease people who have been mocking them for not being able to deliver, or people who don't also have children. Or God doesn't give them children, or God doesn't give us children so that we will have people to send around and people to play with and people to give our names to and people to take care of us when we are old. There is a bigger deal to that. God gives us children so that we will be able to raise godliness from them. We will be able to raise them into becoming godly people to take hold and dominate this world. So he says that he makes them one because he is seeking godly offspring. In that same sense, he gives us grace because he is seeking something from us, that we are going to use the grace to achieve that. And so what is it that God gives us grace for? In 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse number 9 and 10, scripture says, in fact, Paul is writing again, he says, "For I am the least of the apostles, and not even fit to be called an apostle, because I persecuted God's church." Verse 10, he says, "But by God's grace I am what I am, and his grace shown me was not wasted. Instead, I worked harder than all the others. Not I, of course, but the grace that was with me." So when God gives you, when God gives me, when God gives us or shows us grace, it is not just for us to relax and be confessing that God has been gracious. Oh, by God's grace. What are we doing with the grace? Grace comes with responsibilities. When God shows you grace in any form, process it right, that God is giving you a responsibility. God is, expecting something in return for the grace he has shown or given to you, given to me, and given to us. This is what it means. We must process it right so that we don't just be wasting and be, handling things just like that. When God shows us grace, just as when God puts a man and a woman together, he is seeking godly offspring. When God shows us grace, he is seeking hard work. He is seeking results. That if I have given you a second chance, if I have given you an opportunity, which is the same as God showing you or giving you grace, use that grace, which is the opportunity, the second chance, or the privilege God has given to you, to do something in honor and for the glory of his name and for his will and his kingdom. This is what it means for God to give grace, or this is what the grace of God is about. So let's process it right. When we hear somebody say grace, let's process what it is right, so that we will be able to understand it right and handle it right. Otherwise, we will just be, like I said last Monday, we'll just be tickling ourselves and be confessing things, in a way as if it's some fanfare we are having, and we are just not going to make any effective gain of what God has to offer us. This week we have looked at mercy, we have looked at the faithfulness of God, and we are looking at today the grace of God. We must be able to process these things right, so that we will have the right understanding of them, and we will have the right attitudes towards them, and the good effect of such or of these will be of great benefit to us, and by extension to those that are around us, to the glory of God and for the benefit of our souls. May God bless us and give us the ability, the mental ability of discernment to process the things of the faith right, so that we will be able to have the best of Him, to the glory of His name and for the benefits of our souls. Have a great weekend. I'll come your way again next Monday, and we'll continue. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye. If you are blessed by this message, kindly like, share, and subscribe to our channel. God bless you.